Uh, so now, moving on I'm sort of surprised that we haven't been able to glean your our Muppet of the Month from that comment section on the tree. Moving on to our Muppet of the Month. This is a story which I only came across this morning, but it does come from the 27th of February, so it's just about safe, as it were, for this month's watching brief. And this is the news that Facebook has censored a 30,000-year-old, well, not picture, obviously, the picture is much more recent than that, but it censored a picture of a 30,000-year-old sculpture called the Venus of Willendorf as pornographic. The nude statue is the latest artwork to be deemed inappropriate by the social media giant.
Facebook facepalm. I mean, if anybody ever needed an example of why Facebook is not a platform but a publisher,
Mm-hmm.
this is it. Because a publisher has editors who know what they're doing and would know that a museum picture of a probably religious, although we don't know that, uh, statue of that age ain't pornographic. It is culture, mate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the idea that an algorithm can make that kind of judgment is, in the current world at least, absurd and actually dangerous.
Well,
Um,
it is kind of dangerous in so much as it's blunt.
yeah,
Again, I don't want to sort of to rush to make assumptions about anyone's attitudes or politics here, but it's blunt. That's the problem here. And so, for example, there are other instances in this article that are referenced where by paintings, photographs, other sculptures, classical sculpture even, have been flagged
yeah,
similarly. And this is despite Facebook having changed its policy on nudity to, quote, allow photographs of paintings, sculptures, and other art that depicts nude figures. Uh, I,
and we must remember that that policy was changed after they banned the famous photograph of the 9-year-old girl who'd been napalmed in Vietnam.
hmm.
And that was banned on grounds of child pornography, even though I think it was retweeted by the Norwegian or reposted by the Norwegian Prime Minister. Um, so
So in that sense, it had cultural import, as it were, but
yeah,
nonetheless, a private, essentially a private company was making a decision. But these decisions they affect millions of people in terms of what they see as right and wrong. Now, what's interesting is that I posted this story on the RKSuit Facebook page this morning, and people rushed to blame Facebook in so much as it is an American company. They sort of say it's American Puritanism or something like
what happened
that.
to the First Amendment?
Well, exactly. What did happen to the First Amendment? But also, what I find interesting here is this question of how nudity relates to pornography and in turn relates to art. Uh,
Yes,
is the way in which actually, obviously, I don't think Facebook uh, is simply doing this because of its Americanisms, as it were. But this issue comes up because of some very real questions that have to be raised in the modern world about uh, the balance between, I suppose, what you might call Puritanism and freedom of speech.
yeah,
I actually commented on that post on the Facebook page, something along the lines of that the other day. I sort of reflecting on the fact that I was watching a TV program where there was a gentleman with a rifle who was saying, I will defend my Second Amendment rights,
yeah,
and in doing to do so, I'm willing to spill the blood of patriots. And I'm like, oh wow, that's fairly hardcore. Blimey, I'm not making any value judgments there. That's just a hardcore position. Well done.
yeah.
Blimey, that makes an impression. But then he was sort of showing you around the house in this TV program, and he came to the bathroom, and he couldn't talk about what was in the bathroom. He couldn't express. He couldn't say. I was not expecting him to swear. I'm not expecting him even to say poo and wee. But he couldn't say urinate. He couldn't say. He just said this is where the dirty things happen, and then sort of closed the door and ran off. That's what I find interesting about this sort of story. Is it reveals these clean, dirty sexual, unsexual taboos, and it says so much about actually about yet again about the people right now, here now, looking at this sculpture. It doesn't say anything about the sculpture at all. The Venus of Willendorf may have been produced as some sort of fertility symbol, may have been produced as an abstract piece of art. Who knows? But this is not about what that art is. This is more about actually people's ability to handle these taboo situations.
It's really interesting. I mentioned to you before we started the recording that I'm currently involved in a dispute with Google over a page in the pipeline where somebody has complained that an article, which if you read it, and including the note about the pipeline's policy, that an article that explicitly and comprehensively rubbishes the Hitler escaped conspiracy theory and the links of that conspiracy theory and the people that promote it with neo-Nazis and the far right and Holocaust denial is spreading hate speech.
And did you in this interaction with Google, did you meet Mr. Google himself, or?
Well, no, because that's partly the
Mr.
point.
Google busy?
It's all automated.
Yeah, no, exactly.
There is no human editorializing in this. You know, they haven't read the Chuffing article.
No, it's a blunt tool,
they've
and
seen
they've
an
identified a
article
photo,
which has a picture of Hitler. They haven't even read the caption to the picture.
No.
You know, and they've seen a link to a far right website. That's there to show that actually I'm not just, you know, in fact, it was an article was written for the pipeline by somebody else.
People don't have to take your word on it. Yeah,
you don't have to take our word on it. Here is the, you know, we have just cited a piece of evidence. Here is the evidence in original. Go and look at it.
Yeah.
If you don't believe that we're telling these guys are the lying charlatans that we're claiming they are.
And that is interesting because I mean, when we've covered similar issues in the past, my immediate reaction has been, I'm not sure I want to share the link to the right-wing website in this instance. But I think you're quite right in so much as people don't have to go there, but if they want to go there, they can at the very least corroborate what it is that we're talking about in that instance. I suppose, in so much as this is our Muppet of the Month, is this a digital Muppet of the Month? Is the Muppet AI, or is the Muppet more to do with the open-ended? The open-ended provisions that lead to such AI decisions. So this question of what is art and pornography.
No. The Muppet actually is this guy who works. In fact, I think he works for all the main social media platforms. I call them publishers because that's what they are. All the major social media publishers. This guy, I think, who basically works in Silicon Valley in the States. He's called Algorithm.
Oh, Algorithm, right.
Algorithm, yeah. He is at the root of a lot of these problems because basically he knows his noughts and ones, but he doesn't know his A, B, C, Z, and certainly never read a dictionary, let alone an article.
I see. Didn't Algorithm almost win an election at one point?
Oh no, that was his distant cousin Al Gore.
Oh right. Oh, I see.
I see. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm going to unfriend Algorithm then. I'm going to go and find him, and I'll unfriend. Well, I'll friend him first, then I'll unfriend him.
I think just to finish on a serious point, it is serious. It is seriously serious Muppetry. But I think the lesson here is that we talked about the First Amendment. It's there in the in various in the UK Human Rights Act and things like that. Obviously. Freedom of speech is caveated. You can't shout fire in a crowded cinema.
No.
You can't go on television and call for a certain racial group to be murdered in their beds. That happened in Rwanda with a radio station was promoting the genocide. That is just not acceptable. But the idea that these companies can take a complaint that maybe the tiniest of percentages of their users can report something and have a 30,000-year-old cultural object taken down with no consideration of the context and the cultural context and the cultural meaning and the cultural importance is actually really dangerous for us as a functioning, thinking society and group of communities. And it really beholdens us to lean on these social media publishers to act with common sense and rationality and a sense of the wider importance of these issues. The context, absolutely. No, freedom of speech in this context trumps a person being offended, artificially offended, mistakenly offended, absurdly offended by a 30,000-year-old cultural object.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. If we had a time machine, how much egg would be on our face if we went back in time and there was just this guy giggling away, making a naughty statue?
The Mesolithic version of Playboy.
Yeah. This 30,000-year-old cultural object. And he's like, hee.